So you're saying that you work with a lot of senior executives. A lot of the people that are watching this, I would assume, are trying to get hold of those senior executives. So are you telling those senior executives how to manage their email?
Yes, and particularly through their EAs and PAs at the moment.
Hi, Steuart. How are you?
G'day, Mark. Good to see you again.
Great stuff. Yes. So, look, everybody, I just wanted to have Steuart on today and have a little bit of a conversation so we could talk about email from an outreach point of view, but also email from a business perspective. For those of you who don't know, Steuart Snooks is an absolute email guru. So I've known Steuart for probably, what do you think, like 12 years more?
Yes, it's probably longer than you think.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to have a previous employer hire you to come and show us how to be better at email. And I've got to say that some of those skills that you taught us 12, 15 years ago, whenever it was, I still use today. And I haven't found anybody else on the internet or in the professional services business that talks about email in such a common sense way that what you do.
Yeah, great, thanks. And I get that feedback a lot, Mark. A lot of people chase me up 5, 8, 10 years later, and a lot of them talk about how practical it is. So it obviously works, which is great.
Yeah, so you know, I thought if we could get together and have a bit of a chat about emails in the sales space and emails more generally. I understand that you're not a specialist in sales emails, but you know, I'm sure we can have a bit of a conversation about it as we go along. So,
yeah, there's a strong overlap in the principles. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, can you just give us a little bit of information, or you know, like a bit of introduction about Steuart? You know, like who do you work with? You know, a little bit about your background. Just 2 or 3 minutes there for people.
Yeah,
that don't
sure. I started in productivity 23, 24 years ago as a consultant, and so I would follow up a lot of those who've been to a time management program. And over the years, more and more people were telling me, "Hey, email's our biggest time management problem. Have you got something specifically for email?" And there wasn't anything at the time. And so I saw an opportunity to specialise in that 14 years ago, so late 2005. So that's what I did. I did a lot of intensive research around what's best practice in this area and developed ideas and programs around how to get control of email in a workplace environment because email's become central to everything we do these days. And these days, I specialise in working with senior executive teams and their assistants, the EAs and PAs. And that's where I can make the biggest difference to an organisation, is to help the head or the top layer of an organisation get that part of their work life under control. And obviously, another major area where it makes a difference is getting sales teams and sales-oriented or customer service people streamlining that part of their workload as well.
So you're saying that you work with a lot of senior executives. A lot of the people that are watching this, I would assume, are trying to get hold of those senior executives. So are you telling those senior executives how to manage their email?
Yes, and particularly through their EAs and PAs at the moment. Because they're very hard to get, I find that it's easier to get at them through their assistant store than cold calling or a lot of the other strategies that are possible. So I help their EAs, and then they get impressed with that, and they say, "Hey, come and help me as well." Because often it's something that they don't want to admit that they're struggling with. These are smart people; they're efficient people, and there's a whole lot of what they think are bigger picture strategies and issues to address. But this is a central one, and when they see that there's some real gains to be made because they see their assistant or they are referred by their assistant, then they're much more likely to embrace it.
Okay, so let's go straight for the jugular. So if I was emailing a senior person, let's just say C level, but anyone that's quite senior, to try and get a meeting or to try and have a conversation about whatever it is that I do. Like if you're training these C level executives in how to manage their email, what should we as salespeople who are trying to get a hold of them? What's the do's and don'ts?
Firstly, to get the subject line right. 33% of recipients will open an email based on the subject line alone. And an effective subject line has 3 components. but most people only use one of them. And the first component is what's your desired outcome or the next action. So every email has one of four possible outcomes. You want someone to take some sort of an action, or secondly, you want them to respond, and that's all they need to do. Or thirdly, you want them to read your email, but they don't have to take action or respond. And the fourth one's FYI. So having that as the first part of the subject line is a key for getting their attention. Because our challenge when writing an email is to get someone's attention, engage their interest, stimulate them to respond to us in the way that we want. And you've got about 2 seconds to do that in. And the subject line has to do the powerlifting of getting their attention. The second thing you would have in an effective subject line is a time frame. When is it you require this action or response or them to read by? Is it by the end of the day, end of the week, by a certain date? And then the third component is a summary of the topic. What is the actual subject matter? And getting subject lines written this way are very powerful. That would be the first step. The second one is to use what's called the inverted pyramid structure, which is the way you structure the email. And the key here is you have your main point up front. It's the way newspapers and magazines are written. It's called the journalistic style of writing. The American military call it BLUF, B-L-U-F, bottom line up front. Main point is the first thing that they read. So you give them the most important information at the top end, then less important and the least important. So give them information they must have, should have, nice to have. And that way you're appealing to all those various communication and personality styles. Your director driver, which tends to be your sales executive or senior executive, they'll just want to know the facts. So they can just read your main point and then they'll respond. Others who want more detail can read further. And you know how you and I tune out when we're reading an article? Readers can tune out when they've got as much information as they need to then take the action that you're asking them. So they're the two key things, subject line and then the structure of your email.
So it seems to me that it's almost like writing that email, a regular email back to front, or at least some of the ways that we've been writing emails back to front. Because you typically go, hi, Steuart, I've been working with blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Found
Yes.
you on LinkedIn. So, all this fluff. And then I go towards the middle or the end. This is what I want, or this is what I need, or this is the information for you,
Yes.
whatever the purpose of the email is. And then the CTA, thanks very much, see you later. What you've just described was the upside down pyramid. Or I prefer bluff because I like that.
Yes.
Is almost go, this is what you want, and then type. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. It's what's called inverted pyramid. You invert the pyramid. The style that we naturally write is what's called a diamond sequence, where you prepare the ground, you soften the ground, and then you give them your main point, and then you might go on and reinforce that. But it's found that it doesn't work very well by email. The only times to use that are when you're trying to make a request that someone's unlikely to want to grant you, or you're trying to deliver bad news. And in both cases, you're probably better with a verbal conversation. So for email that works, the inverted pyramid is the best. Main point up front. And then give justifications afterwards. So you would give a solution before all the background details. You would give your recommendation before explaining how you got to it. You would make your request before the details. Now that's not natural, is it?
No, it actually seems like it's a bit pushy, and I'm a sales guy. I'm supposed to be a bit pushy.
Now you might have a warm, brief greeting to soften the ground, but need to get to the main point really, really quickly. And I often get that feedback from people. Oh, Steuart, that's a bit direct. But let's be honest, people are bombarded with email. The quicker you can let them know what's needed, when it's needed, what it's about, the happier they are and the more likely they are to respond to you. And you're better to get a quick decision of no than a slow decision of maybe or no decision over a period of time. And of course, with practice, you can refine how you set that up in your first few words or first sentence. But the key is main point's got to be up front. I could show you a diagram of what's called the F shape. Our eyes move in what's called an F shape when we're looking at emails or internet.
I was going to ask you about this one. I've read about this, yeah.
We will read across the first paragraph or sentence. We come down to the second one and we go across but not as far, and then we just skim and scan the rest of it. So if your main point's at the bottom, very little chance they'll read it. Now that's the natural way of writing, And what I suggest to people is write the email the way it comes out of your head, which is diamond sequence, but then cut and paste your main point up the top. If it's a longish email, you might copy and paste, leave your main point at the bottom as well, because people often only remember the last thing that they read. So this is counterintuitive, but it works very powerfully. In fact, I've got two examples. I spoke to a fellow at the ABC, and he wrote back to me. He said, I think I had a whinge to you about not getting responses from a particular manager. Well, I took your advice on a couple of things. I was careful about what went into the subject line, and I delayed sending until early afternoon rather than first thing Monday. Lo and behold, a helpful minimal reply within 10 minutes.
Okay. All right.
And just last week, my brother-in-law, in fact, who works at Daimler Chrysler, said he got a response from a senior manager in just a few minutes, and he usually has to wait days to get a response. And we were just having a chat over Christmas lunch, and I said, the things I talk to people are this and this. And so a few days later, he comes back to me and says, you're right, that stuff works. I got a response in just minutes. Normally takes me days.
Steuart, I've got all these extra questions now I want to ask you. So I'm not sure that we're going to get all of them because I've just written down quite a few. Tell me, let's go back to the subject line. I want to come back to, let's do the timing. So you said you got a response really quickly by sending it in the afternoon rather than the morning.
Yes.
What's your thought process around how do you get a faster response? I mean, everyone wants a speedier response. What's your strategies around there?
Three things in particular. One is getting the subject line to do the powerlifting, so it breaks through, gets attention. You stand out from the pack because you've got those three components in it. The second one's inverted pyramid, so they get the gist of it straight away. They know what this is about. They can read as much or little as they now then need to take the action you're asking for. And then the third one is to get the timing right. How can you avoid peak hour traffic? How can you avoid Monday morning purge in general? In the morning is when we get most of our emails. And when executives are looking at it, they're in a purge mentality. They're trying to filter, sift, sort, get rid of stuff. You don't want to get caught up in that sort of mentality. So time it to be outside of peak times. There's enough research now around ideal days of the week and times of the day. I will often send not so much email messages, but LinkedIn messages on a Sunday afternoon. A lot of senior executives are getting active on their email and on LinkedIn on a Sunday to get ready for the week. The research shows you'll get a 52% response rate on a Sunday, but only 33 to 38% during the week, Monday to Thursday, only 15% on a Friday. So Fridays are a disaster in terms of response rates. And again, your emails should be between 50 to 125 words. 75 words is ideal. Your subject line should be as concise as possible, remembering a lot of these people are now looking at email on a mobile device. So it needs to be mobile friendly. So short, succinct subject lines, about 7 words is ideal.
So I want to pull you up on that and ask you, because this is one of the questions. Can you give me, so before it sounded like you said there was about 150 things that needed to be in your subject line. And I was at the time thinking, well, that sounds counterintuitive. I would have thought, the less was it's going to be better. And then you've just said subject line was critical to getting people to reply. So can you give us an example of a subject line that covers everything that's short as possible?
So I would say action required by COB Tuesday, and then 7 words in your subject line, what the subject is, between 5 to 7 words of the actual subject. So you've got the 3 components. What sort of outcome? When is it needed? Now what's it about? And the what's it about description should be between 5 to 7 words.
So this is one of the things that I do remember from the training, all those, you're an advocate for putting at the start, reply required or FYI. And that were literally the very first things that you put in the email subject line, wasn't it? So,
yes.
The subject line didn't say, like the first words were literally action required or
yes.
FYI or reply required. And I think we even cut that down to just being reply, REPLY, REQ in capital letters with a semicolon.
Yeah, you can certainly do that internally when people understand what the abbreviation's mean.
So my question was, do you think that works if I'm emailing a senior executive or an executive? Let's say I'm trying to talk to a sales director Oracle, one of those large sort of organizations. If I put reply required, end of the week or something like that, do you think that's going to be well received? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I don't work in the sales specific space, I don't really have the authority to speak on that. But I know it does work thoroughly business to business internally with people who know each other. I don't have first-hand experience of how that works in a sales specific environment. But I'd be surprised if the principles don't apply, even if you might have to change the wording somewhat to soften the directness. You think about it, any sales executive wants to very quickly know, what do I have to do with this email? When have I got to do it? What's it about? And so however you do it, answering those three questions up front is much more likely to deal with your email positively or negatively, but you'll get a response than if it's less than distinct by not including those components.
So are you comfortable telling us how you're sharing with us how you're telling your executives to process their email? Like, so if they get emails coming into it, and some of it's coming from me, what would be some strategies that you're telling them how to process inbound email that might then help me to be on the top of their inbox and not the top of their trash box?
Yeah, sure. I talked to them about three things, and one of your questions you sent in advance is, what are the three big mistakes you currently see? And for receivers, three key areas is they don't control when they're paying attention to their email. Now, for senior executives, they tend to be better at this, but they still tend to be giving full attention to email either very early in the morning or late at night. At either end of the day, it's after hours. The second thing is they don't tend to have a system or process that allows them to capture what it is they need to do and store that where they need it until when they need it. And that's the process I show all users how to do that, so that you're not relying on your memory. So when I get an email from you, Mark, I'll type in what's my next action, when am I going to get back to that, and then I'll store it until that day, and I show people how to do that. And that way I'm not as likely to miss things that I do want to follow up on. To be honest, the email from you is probably low priority. Yes, you've ticked a box there, but I don't want to give that attention now. And so I will show the exec how to capture that and bring it back to them at a more appropriate, perhaps downtime or slower time, so that it's not lost completely. Then the third thing is that most people have built up a complicated folder structure and it requires far too much time and effort to maintain. And so they either do that or they've given up on it and they're leaving everything in the inbox. And a lot of senior executives do that. They leave everything in the inbox so they don't lose track of it. So that creates a real problem for you, because you're sending an email into my inbox that's now overfull with complete and incomplete things. So it's even more critical that you, as the sender, make it stand out for me, and that I, as a coach, train the guys how to capture the things that need their attention and store them where they need them until when they need to come back and take some further action on them. So they don't slip through the cracks.
So can you give us a sense of what sort of email load most of these people are under? Like, how many emails are they getting a day? Do you have some sort of insight around how many unread ones are sitting in their inbox? And I think the reason why I ask this is because if I'm trying to get in contact with you to sell you something, I send it, and then the first thing, like literally I've sent it 5 minutes ago, I'm like, I wonder if he's read it yet. Like, why hasn't he responded? And then for every day that goes on, I'm thinking, should I send another email, or should I call him, or should I, reach out to him on LinkedIn, and I'm assuming that I don't know you at this point, right?
Yes.
So, what are you telling people to do in relation to how to handle that, and how many do they have to manage?
Senior executives are getting the biggest volume of email in an organisation. Think of a triangle. At the top of the triangle was the amount of information that used to be in organisations before email. And senior execs only had as much information as they needed to make decisions and move the organisation forward. Now that's been turned on its head, and it's the other way around. The base of the triangle is been inverted, and senior executives are drowning in information and communication and data. So they're getting the biggest volumes, but also they're getting the lowest relevance and the lowest clarity. So that's where having clarity by some of the things we've talked about will make you really stand out. So that's the first thing. Their volumes are high. Exact numbers, it varies quite a lot. But it's the highest of any level in the organisation. So that's the first thing. How do you cut through to guys who've got huge volumes that they're trying to be across? And then in terms of response rate, there's a lot of factors, but generally speaking, if people don't act on your email the first time they see it, they rarely ever will, which is why that subject line's got to get their attention the first time they look at it. You don't leave it to them to interpret. Don't leave it to be ambiguous. Get them to make a decision on it. After 1 hour, open rates dramatically decline, and after 24 hours, your message is likely to be dead. They'll never see it. So you can be proactive. Don't wait for a reply if you haven't had the response after a day or two. Follow up. And that's the third. You asked me a question about mistakes. One of the 3 things that people don't do is they don't follow up. And so don't leave that follow up too long.
So I'm a absolute big fan of not leaving things left unsaid, and I'm pretty robust in reaching out to people, the second, third, fourth time, and I have no problem with that. Is there, and we're talking about an email perspective now, not so much from a sales perspective, but is there, what do you think is the best way for us to do that? Do I just reply to the email that they haven't replied and write, what's up? Or is there a better way to do that? I mean, I've got some thoughts. What do you think?
I think your thoughts will probably be more relevant for mine, given your background. In fact, you taught me an excellent one last year that I started using that worked really, really well, which was to, well, I'll leave you to explain it. But yeah, that really flushed out people who were interested but just weren't getting around to things. The 4 things I would say are common mistakes is sending lengthy or non-formatted messages, especially when you consider that 40% of emails are opened on mobiles. It's very important to be short, sharp, to the point. Sending an email at the wrong time is a common mistake. Roughly speaking, the best times are around 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, Thursday or Wednesday, in that order. Tuesdays will give you the slightly advantage over Thursdays, and then Wednesdays are third best. Using generic subject lines instead of using highly targeted subject lines, which we've already talked about. And then the 4th one's not following up. As you know, people are busy. Just because they received your email, you can't expect that you've hit them at exactly with the right thing at exactly the right time. It might be the wrong thing, and it's highly likely to have been the wrong time. So follow up again until the time is right. And that's where your strategy, I found, was really, really powerful for flushing out their level of interest.
Yeah, so and that was there's a couple of, I think I've already posted a couple of videos on that, but it was just basically that version of, have you given up on this project? So if you've been talking to people and you go, hey, have you given up on this project? People generally go, no, I haven't, or yes, I have, and this is the reason why. So that flushes out a response really about 90% plus of the time. So I don't overuse that because it just works so well. But for sending follow-up emails, so I tend to do a number of things. And one of the things that I like to do is actually taking the same email. I don't know how this is going to work if I'm going to use even less words, but basically taking the same email and just rewriting it. So having almost the same request or the same information and just sending it a second time, rather than, replying and saying something like, just getting this to the top of your inbox, or, you haven't replied yet, or, and because I think that makes people feel somewhat guilty.
Yes.
And that in some way has got that implication, like in the background is like, you haven't responded yet, or there's that sort of implication of, hey, you owe me. And I think if we're in sales, we need to be free of that. So often what I'll do is just hit the first email, reword it so it looks a little bit different, and then just resend it.
Yes.
So that it comes in as almost a fresh email. Then there's no obligation for the other people to validate why they've taken so long. I mean, the reality is it's my inbox, well, it's whoever's inbox, so they can manage it however they like. And I've been surprised how many times I'll get a reply 2 weeks after. I've sent a cold email out to somebody, haven't followed up, and then I'll get a reply 2 weeks later. I'm thinking, God, I have no idea what's in my inbox from 2 weeks ago. Like it's whatever's in there's gone. Like you say, I'm not replying. So some people do manage their inbox quite slowly, I think.
Yes, very much so.
So,
and particularly if you're relatively low on the pecking order at this particular time.
well, we're salespeople, so we're always low on the pecking order. So,
Yeah.
so when should we not use email? And I know you're the email superstar, so this might not be the perfect question for you.
Yeah, there's a whole range of topics and issues that we can send via email. And there's a whole lot that we shouldn't send via email. In fact, I've got a little chart. I'm just going to dig it up here while I'm talking to you. It's something that I show people and have as a what do you call it, the cheat sheet. So they can just on a glance go, yep, this. So obviously let me just bring that up. Obviously, complexity is really difficult to get complex issues across via email, particularly if you haven't had some sort of preliminary conversation. Anything that's going to create conflict or emotional, highly emotional response is not going to be best done by email. Delegating a simple issue or simplicity, not complexity by email is fine. They say with email, use an email to warm up a sales prospect, but then you want to close in a face-to-face conversation. And that's what we're doing all the time on LinkedIn, isn't email on LinkedIn. We're trying to warm them up, but we're actually trying to move to a verbal conversation. It's very hard to get your personality and your character across with the written word. Our language and our voice and our face obviously create a much stronger impact. Arranging a meeting shouldn't be sent as an email ping pong. That's obviously a calendar invite that happens to be delivered by email. A delicate negotiation is just not going to work in email, is it?
No. Can we just go back to that calendar shuffling thing? So,
Cool.
so what do you advocate there? Do you advocate one of those automation tools or an old school phone call and saying, hey, Steuart, when's the best time to catch up, and then send the calendar invite?
Yeah, I think it depends on your relationship. I use a range of those tools, and when I'll send people an invite, I might mention some alternate times in there. But yeah, just starting generically, hey, sometime this week, and then they come back with, Thursday's good, and then you try and nail down a time. You should be able to narrow it down using options inside an email or some of the calendar sharing tools that are around.
Interesting. I actually don't like those calendar sharing tools because I think it places the emphasis on the other person to choose the date and time. So if you were the client, so if you're the prospect, and I said, hey, Steuart, let's catch up sometime next week. I'm going to be in Melbourne. And you said, yeah, no worries, Mark, grab some time in my diary. I think that's 100% okay because I'm asking, but I don't like it when it's the other way around. So because if you're the client and I'm saying, pick a time that's available in my diary, I think there's also some value in that backwards and forwards, whether it be over telephone or over email, because it lets you see how people are with a very basic level of negotiation. So all you're trying to do is negotiate a time that's going to suit. And if they become extremely difficult or don't reply or don't respond, then you can expect, this is and I'm happy for you to prove me wrong, but you can then expect that level of negotiation and that method of communication to be consistent throughout your relationship. So if they make it hard for you to meet or they're very slow to respond, I then go,
way to start, is it?
Or I'm on the wrong channel.
Yes.
Right. So if I'm emailing Tina and, I say, yeah, let's catch up next week, and it takes her 2 days to go, yep, I think Thursday or Friday would suit. I'm like, okay, I'm calling.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because I can't afford another 2 days for her to go. If I go, yeah, how's Thursday, 10 o'clock? And then 2 days later, she goes, well, actually, that's now taken. And then another 2 days, like I'm in the wrong channel.
Yes.
So then I'm going to ring. Whereas other people, you can email backwards and forwards. There was a gentleman I booked a meeting with today. I said, hey, I'm going to be in Hunter Street at 2:30. Will that work? And he goes, no, I've got something till 12:45. Let's make it 1 o'clock around Hyde Park. Now that exchange was in 6 minutes.
Yes.
So like, okay, this email is the communication method for that particular person.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's right. There is no one-size-fits-all formula. Another thought that came to mind as we were speaking is sometimes in an email you might want to direct them to your calendar sharing software, but instead of just sending them generically there and they've got to pick from a whole range, you might pick out 3 links and drop in those 3 particular times, and they just click that link and it goes to your calendar software where they can finish it off.
I like that.
There's a range of ways to do it, and as you say, finding their preferred medium is the key. Emails are highly congested medium, LinkedIn less so, text message less again, phone even less. When you're on the phone, it's just a one-to-one. When you're on email, you're one of 20 people talking at them from their screen at any given time.
It sounds like you're talking people away from using email in some respects.
Using it in conjunction with the range of other tools. There's a range of tools that we've got, and most people get very comfortable using just 1 or 2 of them. And having the flexibility to use the right tool at the right time for different people's tastes as well. So email's not evil, but it's not going to fix everything either. And used appropriately, like most things in life, and we enjoy a drink and a coffee, and used appropriately, they're very successful.
So would you say email is overused in today's communication channels?
Oh, very much so. It's the Swiss Army knife of communication tools. It does a lot of things reasonably well. It doesn't do very many things exceedingly well. And so we tend to push everything through email. So when we get an email, we tend to respond by email. If you get a phone call, you tend to respond by phone. When we get a text message, we tend to respond by text. And not many people think outside the box and say, hey, just because I received that by email doesn't mean I have to respond by email. Maybe we should switch channels to something that's more appropriate for the person or the conversation, and get away from...
Yeah, I like that. That could be the headline for this little session. Email guru says, don't use email.
Yes, that would get attention. Well, don't use email all the time.
Yeah. No, I got it. So early on in the conversation, you said something that really interested me, and I wrote it down, which is unusual for me. You said you go to talk to senior executives and you email them, or you get to them through their EA. How would you structure an email to an executive assistant, or to can you explain that and maybe provide a little bit of tactics around that? Is that...
Yeah, my situation might be a little bit different in as much as I'm playing a long-term game. Mm-hmm. I'm developing relationships with EAs as a target market, and giving them good value, giving them some takeaway that makes a real difference to their workload. If I've done that successfully, their exec's going to immediately notice, and their EA is very likely to be positive and actually promote that difference to their executive. And as a result of that, they might say, hey, listen, can you come and speak at our conference? Can you speak at our next meeting? Can you come in and show me how you do that? So it's giving the EA some first-hand practical benefit for themselves, and building that relationship so that they'll then want to invite me to their senior executive. So that's probably a slow burn by comparison to the sales process you talk about with most of your audience.
But you're still leading. It sounds like you're still leading with value. You're leading with something that's going to interest them, rather than saying, hey, I want to come and talk at your next sales kickoff, or I want to come and talk at your next productivity event, or whatever the case may be. You're going, hey, here's some stuff of value. This is how you can be better at managing your inbox. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's right. We've got to show value, and we've got to give before you get.
Yeah, absolutely. But everyone's focused on what's in it for me, and they forget that, don't they? Can I ask you, let's bring this to wrap it up, because people get bored looking at you on my face. Yes. What's the number one point?
You're looking pretty good, mate. I reckon you've got younger.
It's the lighting. What's the number one point for email for salespeople, do you think? If you can think of one point that you should tell salespeople when they're using email to do or not do.
I had 2 things. Make it super easy for the receiver to respond by using some of the strategies we've talked about. Make it really easy for them to go, yep, I want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Don't leave them to have to interpret. Make it really easy. And that's where those 3 things in the subject line, it just makes it easier for them. Secondly, I would tend to use, in terms of tone and language, use invitational language, invite them to an opportunity rather than, be trying to sell them something. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But that word opportunity and some of the language choices subtle language choices can make a very big difference. When really all you've got dots and dashes on a screen, you haven't got voice tone or a smiling face. You've got to get through with simple language choice. And it's amazing what some of the small changes in language can do to break through.
100%. I agree. I'm going back off track again. Sorry. How do you feel about sending links and PDFs and that sort of thing in email? Do you have any research around that?
Yeah, got to be careful there when you consider the percentage that are looked at on a mobile phone. So attachments, it's very unlikely people are going to look at attachments on a mobile phone. So if you do have attachments, list them in order that they should be opened, and perhaps give a little snapshot of what's in an attachment or some sort of incentive for them to open that. And where possible, links instead of attachments. People are much more likely to click a link than to open an attachment. So if you can upload the PDF to some sort of intranet or Dropbox or something like that and then send them a link, people are more likely to click a link than to open an attachment. Immediately think they are going to get overwhelmed with information with an attachment. Most of us think of attachments as lots and lots of words, so there's a resistance to that. But there is a place for them if you let people know what's in it for them to open it and give them some sort of incentive and recognise that they're even more unlikely to open it on a mobile device if you know that that's going to be what they're going to be looking at your email on.
Yeah, and I think like in the last probably 2 years or so, using things like third-party things like Dropbox and that is probably going to make it even more difficult for people to view your downloads. A lot of those have been corrupt. There's been a lot of corrupt Microsoft, OneNote, that sort of thing, and Dropbox links that have been sent around. So people are very wary. I know I am of clicking on those links. If it's a landing page that's sponsored by an organisation, I'm happy to go to that to do that. Okay, and so just lastly, Steuart, how can people get in contact with you? What are some of the things that you do?
Yeah, sure. I suppose LinkedIn's a great starting point for making a connection.
Yep.
And then my website's also a good place, particularly the blog page. I'm always recycling information and ideas, 3, 4, 5 times a week on the blog page and on LinkedIn. So my work is mostly working with busy professionals, particularly senior execs and their EAs through training, workshops, coaching, online webinars like this, and then speaking at conferences and executive retreats. Those tend to be the sort of ways people access my expertise in this area. And
the name of the website?
SteuartSnooks.com.au, and you can spell Steuart any of the two normal ways, or you can spell it the proper way, which is my way, which is unique. So in fact, I've got 6 different addresses, all point to the same. Steuart spelt 3 different ways, .com versions, and then .com.au versions as well.
Okay, so pretty hard not to find you.
I'd hope so.
And I remember very well when you came to our organisation and you you gave us some very quick strategies around how to manage our inbox. And I think within something like 15 minutes, there was about 12 people, I think, in our classroom from memory. It's going back to the days when it was black and white. So, but not quite. But it was literally 10 or 12 years ago. And I think we processed almost 10,000 emails in 20 minutes between us as a group of 10 people. So that was really impressive. I mean, just the way that you were able to give us those explain the skills and then go, right, 20 minutes, go, and we're able to process all these emails so that we got closer to that magic email, inbox zero that everybody talks about and wants to get to.
Yes. It's about, the problem with email is not overload, it's not volume, it's lack of process. And once you've got a process, good process cuts through volume like a hot knife through butter. The record for that little exercise, in 20 minutes, 17 people processed 59,808 emails in 20 minutes. That's the best I've ever seen. I had to add it up 4 times the day it happened. I thought, this can't be right. But I added it up, and nearly 60,000 emails by 17 people in 20 minutes once they had a process. Of course, that tends to happen when there's a lot of cleaning up and filing going on. The most important part of the process is for the stuff you actually need to take action on, the high priority, which is around 20% of it. And I've developed a new process since I saw you, which has gone gangbusters the last 12 months, particularly for Outlook users, which adds a couple of columns to their inbox. It allows them to choose the priority, high, medium, low, type in the next action so they don't have to do that thinking and rereading, and then they click a date when they want to come back to it, and it drops into their inbox down at the date that they're going to come back to it. And so now they don't have to rely on their memory, they don't have to reread, they don't have to reanalyze. EAs love it, and when their execs see it, they love it as well. And again, it comes back to having a process that's robust, repeatable, takes low energy, and relies on your system instead of your memory.
And I can 100% endorse it. Yeah, good work. Right. All right. Well, Steuart, thanks for joining us for a bit of a chat. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure some of the salespeople will be able to use those tips that you've given us so that they're a little bit more effective.
Great to talk with you again, Mark. Hope it makes a difference.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks for your time. Bye.